Hi there, and welcome to JLB Track tutorials. Track can be used to record and maintain a register of environmental impact assessments in the Environmental Aspects and Impacts Register. Today's tutorial will provide a demonstration for the Environmental Aspects and Impacts Register in Track. I'll be showing you how to raise an environmental impact assessment, assess the level of risk, and other key details pertaining to the environment screen. The Environmental Aspects and Impacts Register can be found under the Safety and Environment taskbar. To add a new environmental assessment to the register, select New from the top toolbar. A new environmental impact assessment will appear. We'll be referring to the environmental impact assessment as EIA for shorthand. For some good examples, we'll be going over an existing EIA. You can see that all the preliminary information has been completed. First, we have the date raised, which defaults to the current date but can be changed to when the assessment was initiated. Then, who the entry is raised by, using the drop-down field. And then also when the EIA was initially reviewed, and also when the next review date is set for. You then need to include the aspect group, using the drop-down, and the specific environmental aspect, or the activity in other words. A description of the environmental impact, or the potential change or harm, can then be entered. Then finally selecting which department the environmental impact is relevant to, and also adding the operational area where the environmental impact is located, if applicable. The person or team who is responsible for assessing the environmental assessment should then be advised of the new EIA. This may be completed by printing or emailing the EIA by selecting the options from the top toolbar. To assess the potential risk without a control implemented, refer to the company's risk assessment procedure and then select the likelihood of it occurring using the drop-down field. Then also selecting the consequence of the hazard using another drop-down field, which will automatically calculate the level of risk. The likelihood and consequence should be mapped against the level of risk and configuration from the company's risk assessment procedure. The company's risk assessment process and criteria can be linked to Track as a PDF document. It will appear whenever Risk Help is selected. This will allow descriptions of the various likelihood, consequence, and risk criteria to be described. As we continue with the initial risk assessment, we need to tick significant if the risk is significant. What is significant should be described in your system documentation. Then select whether the environmental impact is an actual or potential impact. And then decide whether it's current, past, or future using the drop-down field. You can then add whether the environmental hazard has any legislative or regulatory impact, and also ticking the box if the company complies with the respective legislation or regulation. Then adding any interested parties that are external to your company, and finally adding, if there is any, quantitative data available on the environmental hazard such as invoices or reports. The final area to fill out relates to the controls or preventative measures to reduce the risk. This includes adding the control or controls that have been determined, then undertaking another risk assessment to determine the resultant risk, once again using the drop-downs for likelihood and consequence, and then the resultant risk will automatically be mapped out. Then adding if any further environmental monitoring is required, and if any further action required to implement the control. You can then designate the person who has responsibility for taking action using the drop-down field, and then once action has been taken, you can describe the action taken and select the date that this was taken using the drop-down field. Environmental aspects never closed, and the potential will almost always exist. Consequently, all environmental impact assessments are displayed on the Environmental Aspects and Impacts Register at all times. This concludes the Environmental Aspects and Impacts Register screen tutorial.